our second. So we welcome, it's my great joy to welcome you on this platform, especially to our speakers. We have 4 world-class speakers. I mean, 4 world-class speakers. And really, we are very, very grateful to you that you have given your time to be with us. And I think we are looking forward to sitting at your feet, to listening to your word of wisdom. We have Reverend Canon Dr. Chigo Chikwe. Welcome to you. We have our Reverend Dr. Steve Chok. Welcome to you. And we have Reverend Indigit Bohal, Reverend Dr. Indigit Bohal. Welcome to you. And I have Mrs. Yogi Sutton. Welcome to you. So really, we are in a beautiful, exciting webinar today. And really, thank you, George. George will be our technical man today. He's in charge of the technical side. Thank you for playing that short video at the beginning. That remind me really Martin Luther King speech in 1963. I have a dream that our children, one day our children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Seeing that video, that means that really when there's a political will, when we want to do it, when local councillors or church leaders can get together, really atmosphere, value people, loving, harmony can come. So again, thank you. So I now ask my dear friend, colleague, Reverend Papa Owusu to lead us in the opening devotion.
Good morning to you all. We are grateful to God for a day like this, a day to come together to reflect on inclusion, diversity, and equality. I have decided not to say much because I know that we've got great speakers here who are going to take us through the day. But quite recently, we've got the strategy for justice, dignity, and solidarity as a church. And I just thought I will just pick 1 or 2 sentences from that, and then based on it, we sort of give our prayer. And there is also a hymn that I will just read the words out for us to reflect on the words of these hymns, on this hymn, and then we have a word of prayer together. With our strategy for justice, dignity, and solidarity, which is working towards a fully inclusive church as the Methodist Church, one of the things that was said in the report is it is the church's intention to value every human being as part of God's creation and the whole people of God. And they go on to say that human beings are created in the image of God and are loved by God. Each one of us is unique and valued by God. And thus the intrinsic worth of every human being is to be upheld. Such worth is afforded through the act of being created. And it's not related to the behavior of human beings, nor to their stage in life from birth to death. So we are all created in the image of God. And as we are created in the image of God, we are being reminded by Matthew Horn in his hymn, "Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. A place where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive. Built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome in this place." The hymn writer goes on to say that let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong and true, where all God's children dare to seek the dream, to dream God's reign anew. Here the cross shall stand as witness and as symbol of God's grace. Here, as one, we claim the faith of Jesus. All are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where love is found, in water, wine, and wheat, a banquet hall on holy ground where peace and justice meet. Here the love of God through Jesus is revealed in time and space as we share in Christ the feast that frees us. Let us build a house where hands will reach beyond the wood and stone to heal and strengthen, serve and teach, and live the word they've known. Here the outcast and the stranger even bear the image of God's face. Let us bring an end to fear and danger. All are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where all are named, whether black, whether white, yellow, green, male, female, where all are named. Their songs and visions heard and loved and treasured, taught and claimed as words within the word, built of tears and cries and laughter, prayers of faith and songs of grace. Let this house proclaim from floor to rafter that all are welcome in this place. So we are grateful to God that diversity, with our differences, we are all welcome together by God on this platform. And we pray that the Lord will give us that kind of mind to understand that all of us are made in his image. And so let us pray. This prayer is from the Lutheran Book of Worship. O God, you created all people in your image. We thank you for the astonishing variety of races and cultures in this world. Enrich our lives by ever-widening circles of friendship and show us your presence in those who differ most from, until our knowledge of your love is made perfect in our love for all your children. You, the one from whom on different paths all of us have come, to whom on different paths all of us are going. Make strong our hearts, but unite us. Build bridges across all that divide us. United, make us rejoice in our diversity. and at one in our witness to your peace, a rainbow to your glory. Be here this morning. Speak through our speakers to us. Be here this morning. Enrich our discussions. Be here this morning. Be part of our fellowship. In the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Amen indeed. Thank you, Reverend Papa. And now may I invite the superintendent of this circuit, Reverend Dan Hallett, to set us in the context why this webinar is so crucial for us. Reverend Dan Hallett is our superintendent.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see so many of you have joined us already, and I'm sure others will be coming along later. This is another really important day in the life of our circuit. We've been on this journey with our EDI group for some time now. This really builds on the work of our previous seminar and all the conversations and the work that's been going on between those times as we've begun to learn more of what it is we've already seen this morning and heard this morning from the videos and from what Reverend Papa has already had to share with us. We are deeply committed to this work, and we're learning to see this not as some sort of optional extra into the life of our circuits and local churches, but as part of the core foundational work of what it means to belong together. God's work and God's mission is indeed this work that you are gathered together to share in this morning. So it just warms my heart to see so many of you from different churches and different places. And I'm just so grateful that you've come to share, to listen, to respond, and to put into practice some of the things that we're learning here. I feel a word of warning is necessary. In the videos, just as we were gathering, there was the promise of dancing. Unfortunately, because of Zoom, we're not able to dance together this morning. But do remember, at the end of this month, as we mark and celebrate Black History Month in the life of our circuit, there is a circuit service which will include the opportunity for dancing. So if you feel the lack of the ability to dance together this morning, just hold on to that and remember at the end of this month, as part of our continued sharing together, we will be able to dance together in our circuit service right at the end of October. This is just one of the events then, one of the opportunities we have to develop our work and our life together. You've all hopefully been sent some of the study resources, and I hope you're already finding those a helpful way of reacting and responding to Black History Month in the life of our circuit. If you haven't had those resources by post or by email, do let us know and we can make sure you've got them. But I'm really looking forward to today, to hearing from our speakers and to sharing with you in our small group work. So just on behalf of the circuit, thank you for being here. Thank you for recognizing that God is calling us to this work together. And we just look forward with God to all that will happen here and all that we'll take from this day. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Dan. Now, okay, I think you are doing very well, keeping your microphone muted. If you are not speaking, please keep your microphone muted. Now, we have, may I invite my colleague, Deacon Jacqueline Isama John, to introduce our first speaker, Deacon Jacqueline.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce our first speaker. The Reverend Canon Dr. Chika Chike is the vicar of Emmanuel Church, Forest Gate in East London. In addition to parish ministry, Dr. Chike has been active in the social justice field in Britain for the past 25 years. He's chair of the Anglican Minority Ethnic Network, in short, AMEN, and leads an interfaith project called Faithful Friends. Dr. Chike holds several degrees, an MA from the University of Wales, Trinity St. David, an MTH in Applied Theology from Oxford University, and a PhD in Theology from the University of Birmingham. He is a visiting lecturer at the University of Roehampton, where he teaches Christian mission in the 21st century, Pentecostalism, and world religions. He is the author of numerous books, has been based in his East London church since 2010. He is also chair of the Rights and Equalities in Newham, a charity advocating for marginalized people. The Reverend Canon Dr. Chika Chike is a member of the College of Royal Chaplains, which forms part of Her Majesty the Queen's ecclesiastical household. He is a chaplain to Her Majesty the Queen. A chaplain to the Queen is a member of the clergy who, after distinguished service, is appointed to an honorary role in service to the monarch. As such, Dr. Chike is on a rota of 48 chaplains in service of the monarch. Chaplains across England, Wales, and Scotland who are available to Her Majesty at any time and will preach once a year at a royal residence. Dr. Chike is married to Obi and they have 4 children. He enjoys walking and watching motor racing. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the Reverend Canon Dr. Chika Chike.
Thank you. Thank you, Deacon Jacqueline, for that a wonderful introduction. It's really great to be with you all here. And congratulations to the Methodist Circuit for organizing this. Can I also pay tribute to my fellow speakers? It would be good to hear them as well. In particular, I want to mention Indigit. Indigit, when I was based in Sheffield, Indigit was one of the people I benefited from because he used to come to our college when I was at the Church Army College to speak to us. So great to see you again, Indigit. Now, my talk has been titled Racism as the Big Lie, an examination of some Christian contributions to the fight against racism. Now, some of you may have heard this story. There's a story about what happened on election night in the United States. The story goes that when Donald Trump and those around him saw that the result was slipping away, one of his friends, who is reported to be Rudolph Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, came up with an idea. He reportedly said, why don't we just say that Trump won? Just ignore the results and say Trump won. And they did. And this is now known in the USA as the big lie, and the country is still in the grip of it. I share this because something similar actually happened with racism. Hundreds of years ago, when white slaveholders started being challenged for using their fellow human beings for slave labor, they came up with the idea, let's just say they are not human beings like us. And they did. And the lie spread, and much of humanity is still in the grip of that lie. But throughout history, brave men and women, brave and thoughtful men and women have fought this lie. And I want to share with you the work of 3 people. Sadly, in this, my example is just all men, but there have been many examples of women who have engaged in this fight. Their approaches can be linked to what they believed about God. The first one is a man called Ottobah Cugoano. Cugoano believed in the justice of God. Cugoano was a contemporary of somebody else called Olaudah Equiano. And Cugoano and Equiano and a number of others formed something called the Sons of Africa, which were a group of Black people who were campaigning for the abolition of the slave trade here in Britain in the 1700s and 1800s. If you have never heard about him or Equiano or any of the others, well, you are in good company. You're not alone. Sadly, writers of European history have made sure of that. Now, a key feature of Cugoano's criticism of slavery, which is rooted in racism, is that a just God does not like some part of his creation to be oppressing the other. Cugoano believed that God was a creator who loved diversity. In his book, entitled Thoughts and Sentiments, he reminds his readers that God deliberately made people to have different complexions. He says this must be observed, that it had so pleased the Almighty Creator to establish all the varieties of things in nature, different complexions, and other circumstances amongst men and women. Cugoano's conviction that God delighted in seeing a creation full of many different things in different shapes, sizes, and colors, and in particular, people of different sizes, shapes, and complexions, was probably why he was so sure that God would punish those who enslave Africans because they are Black. They were in effect opposing God, who had deliberately made people different. He says this: we may be assured that God will certainly avenge himself of such heinous transgressors of his law, and of all those planters and merchants, and of all others who are the authors of the Africans' graves, severities, and cruel punishments. And no plea of absolute necessity can possibly excuse them. Cugoano's conviction that slave traders were disobeying a good and powerful God made him issue many dire warnings for what could happen to them if they continued with this. He said this: but this must appear evident, that for any man to carry on a traffic in the merchandise of slaves and to keep them in slavery, or for any nation to oppress, extirpate, and destroy others, that these are crimes of the greatest magnitude and a most daring violation of the laws and commandments of the Most High, and which at last will be evidenced in the destruction and overthrow of all the transgressors. He continues, and nothing else can be expected for such violations of taking away the natural rights and liberties of men and women, but that those who are the doers of it will meet some awful visitations of the righteous judgment of God. So this was Cugoano's views, essentially based on his idea that God was just. The second person I want to share with you is John Lewis. Many of you may know about John Lewis, but looking through John Lewis's work, one of the things that comes through as a major motivator was the idea of the victory of God. The idea that ultimately God would succeed, God would have victory. John Lewis was a young man who in his 20s was actually with Martin Luther King when Martin Luther King made the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. I sometimes wonder, a young man in his 20s, what was it that motivated him? What makes a young man in his 20s at the receiving end of such wickedness and brutality to not become bitter and seek revenge? What struck me with John Lewis is that he was totally convinced that in the end, the racists will be proved wrong, and all those fighting against it will be shown to be on the right side. All those fighting against racism will be shown to be on the victorious side, the side that will win out in the end. In other words, God will have victory, and that victory will prevail. We can use an analogy of a child who is being maltreated by a wicked babysitter, and they know that their parent would at some point come home. And here is a quotation from John Lewis: all our work, all our struggle, all our days add up to one purpose: to reconcile ourselves to the truth and finally accept once and for all that we are one people, one family, the human family. So he says to Black and other minority ethnic people, he says this: release the needs to hate, to harbor division and the enticement of revenge. Release all bitterness, hold only love, only peace in your hearts, knowing that the battle of good to overcome evil is already won. In fact, John Lewis didn't just believe that God will have victory at the end, he believed that God has already had that victory, and all those fighting on the right side are on the victorious side. And the third and last person is Frederick Douglass. Douglass believed that God is right and is righteous. Douglass was an American abolitionist who worked his whole life on the project of abolition. He was born into slavery. He escaped and used his freedom, intellect, and energy to campaign for abolition. He has been described as possibly the greatest American. His driving force was a strong belief that slavery was wrong because it goes against a righteous God. Put a different way, since God is righteous, anything that would offend a righteous God is wrong and should be resisted. Hence, he put his energy into the task of bringing about the kind of world that befits a righteous God. He strongly believed that God was using him to achieve this. But whilst on the one hand, he believed God had called him and protected him for the work of abolition, he could not bring himself to believe that it was the same God that was being worshipped by the white slaveholders. He describes here some of the practices of the slaveholders. This is a quote from him. "A great many times have we poor creatures been nearly perishing with hunger when food in abundance lay moldering in the safe and smokehouse, and our pious mistress was aware of that fact, and yet that mistress and husband would kneel every morning and pray that God would bless them in basket and store." Douglass observed how the more pious slaveholders, those who actually practiced more visible Christianity, were the ones who treated those they held in slavery most harshly. From these and other observations and experiences, Douglass concluded this: "I assert most unhesitatingly that the religion of the South of the United States, is a mere covering for the most horrid crimes, a justifier of the most appalling barbarity, a sanctifier of the most hateful frauds, and a dark shelter under which the darkest, foulest, grossest, and most infernal deeds of slaveholders find the strongest protection." In other words, those people were simply using religion to hide their wickedness. And Douglass saw through that and worked to resist that. These are just 3 examples, and we ourselves can follow their examples. Being Christian should not mean being docile or passive in the face of social justice, because for these 3 people, Cugoano, Lewis, and Douglass, they were motivated by what they thought about God, about the justice of God, about the victory of God, and about the righteousness of God, to actually work hard to overthrow the system of racism. Like these 3, we too can work to bring about the kind of world we believe God wants to see. Thank you. I will stop there for now.
Really, thank you, Venkaro Chigo. Thank you for really enlightening us on those 3 factors. So now, according to a plan, we have now opportunity to go into breakout groups. So we have 15 minutes to go into breakout groups. So we have the team leaders there, the group leaders there. And when we go to, we have 15 minutes And so we have the opportunity to reflect, to discuss about the presentation. And if we can identify one key question that we would like to put to the speaker during the panel. So once you identify the question, you please write it down immediately on the chat box. So after the 15 minutes, I think I'll ask George to allow us to have around a 5-minute comfort break, and then we come back for the second presentation. So thank you. Let's go now. We are under the instruction, the guidance of George, who is going to send us in breakout groups, and then we'll go. Thank you.
Okay, so you don't have to do anything. There will be a prompt for you to join the breakout room. Just click on that and you should be fine.
Thank you.
All right, well done.
I can start inviting people to come back because we are about to hear our second presentation. If you could please start coming back. We don't want to miss any part of the presentation.
Ollie, I'm going to do my bit now, so don't do it for 15 minutes.
George, are we?
All ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. We are now going to listen to the second presentation, and may I invite Sister Norma to introduce our second speaker, please. Norma, over to you.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you. And good morning again, everyone. So my name is Norma Downer-Powell, and I worship at Bushhill Park Methodist Church. The reason I'm doing this is because I worked with Reverend Steve Chalk as part of the Oasis Community Learning. I joined Oasis back in May 2020 and worked for the organization for 7 years, retiring just before the pandemic, which was probably good timing, I don't know. But I then contacted Steve's office and asked for a bio, and they've sent me a short bio. So Steve, I'm sorry if it's one that you've heard so many times, but for this audience, here we go. Steve Chalk founded Oasis Trust back in 1985. And then there was a vision to build inclusive local communities. Oasis is now one of the largest charities in the UK, as well as working in a host of other countries. It provides housing, education, healthcare, various other community building initiatives, and it's now working with the Ministry of Justice to create the UK's first secure school. Steve is also an author, speaker, and former UN Special Advisor on human trafficking, and he's also a Baptist minister. He holds an MBE and various honorary fellowships, all awarded for his work in social inclusion and justice. He still leads Oasis and is also the founding minister of Oasis Church at Waterloo in central London, which is where I was based on the education side. And that Waterloo Church regards themselves and they're seen as a place of inclusion, where all are welcomed. And believe me, my personal addition to this is working within Oasis, working and attending some of the functions that Waterloo Church would put on. I can attest to the fact that it is a place where all are welcome. So without further ado, let us get to the heart of the matter. Steve, it's over to you. Steve Chalk. Thank you.
Thanks, Norma. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful, a wonderful opportunity for me to be with you. I want to start by simply saying this. I think it's a little known fact, but it's true, that the Bible begins with the original "get your knee off my neck" text. Long before "get my knee off your neck" became a saying, centuries, millennia before the murder of George Floyd, the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, is the original "get your knee off my neck" text. I'd like to explain to you why. And I think it's important to begin there at the beginning. The Bible, of course, is all about, as we've already heard and we all know, it's about inclusion, diversity, and equality. It is the justice and solidarity text, or a group of texts, really. The problem is that when we read the Bible badly, when we don't read the Bible well, we end up with a big lie. We end up believing whatever we choose to believe. And that's why, as we all know, every single one of us on this Zoom conference this morning, seminar, workshop, know this, that over the centuries, the Bible has been weaponized. The Bible has ended up literally being the tool of oppression. So many of you on this call, I myself, have known oppression that comes to me because of the Bible. Just last week, somebody spoke to me at an event I went to, a Christian, who came up to me and told me that I wasn't a Christian and asked me whether I really feared God, explaining to me that I needed to because of my future. The Bible has been weaponized, and it's been used to justify cruelty and oppression and exclusion. The oppression and the exclusion of Black people and people of color, apartheid. But it's also, as we know, been used to exclude or downplay the role of women. It's been used to exclude people of other religions. It's even been used, as we all know, to exclude people who are the wrong kind of Christians. If you're evangelical, to exclude those liberal people. If you're Protestant, to exclude the Catholics or the Orthodox Church, all depending on your point of view. It's been used to exclude people who are non-believers. And it's been used to exclude LGBT people. Now, I'm so proud as a Baptist leader to applaud you for the fantastic steps that the Methodist denomination has taken ahead of others in that inclusion. Genesis, back to Genesis chapter 1 though. Why do I say that Genesis chapter 1 is the original "get your knee off my neck" text? Only if we read the Bible well do we see these things. And the tragedy, of course, is that Genesis chapter 1 has been read as a history book or a science textbook. And people have argued over the creation taking course over 6 literal days. And Christians have fallen out with each other about that. And Oasis runs 53 schools besides a whole number of churches. We have 30,000 kids in our schools, and you see the confusion that's created, where in their church they've learned that God created the world in 6 literal days and the earth is a young earth, and then go into a biology class or a science class or an English class or a maths class or a geography class, and they're utterly confused. We need to read the Bible well, and when we don't read the Bible well, it leads to all sorts of injustices. So how does Genesis begin? Genesis chapter 1. God created, and it reaches its pinnacle for me on the first page. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Let me read it to you. Let me read it to you. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Through not understanding the Bible, we rob it of its power, as I've already said. When was Genesis 1 written? Genesis 1 isn't the most ancient piece of the Bible. It doesn't appear in chronological order for us. We know that Genesis, the first 5 books of the Bible, the books of Moses, the Pentateuch, as we so often call them, were edited together much later, probably by Ezra, the priest. We know by studying them textually that the books are made up of pieces from different places that were put together. Genesis chapter 1 is a creation story. Genesis chapter 2 to 4, the story of Adam and Eve, is a completely different creation story written in a slightly different language, with different names for God in a different style. And Genesis chapter 1, the theologians, the experts, the linguists, the anthropologists believe was probably, very probably, written in Babylon in the Jewish exile. We all know about that because you all know Boney M's song, "By the rivers of Babylon, we sat down and wept. How can you sing the Lord's song in a strange land?" Some of you have probably danced to it in years gone past, talking about dancing. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? Well, as we know, as the people were in exile in Babylon, robbed of their rituals and robbed of their temple and robbed of their Sabbaths and robbed of their texts, and pushed into a situation where they were forced to honor and work with beliefs and principles that weren't theirs. Some of the Jews did sing God's song. There's the story of Daniel in Babylon, who learned how to sing God's song in a strange land. But it's reckoned that the writers of Genesis 1, this poem, because that's what it is. In fact, if you read it carefully, even in your English text, you'll see that some of the lines are set out very similar to the Psalms, because it is a poem. Genesis 1 is a poem. It's not a history book. It's a poem. Could say so much more about it, but I'll run out of time. And this poem is extraordinary. One, because it's based on another poem that you can look up tonight on Google. You can learn everything on Google for free, can't you? It's called The Babylonian Creation Story, or The Babylonian Creation Myth. If you look up Babylonian Creation Story, you'll see that we have thousands, we dug up from Babylon, well, of course, Iraq today. We've dug up from great libraries there, incredible treasures. We have thousands of copies of the historical story of creation as recorded by the Babylons, a myth, another poem. And the thing is, if you read the Babylonian creation story, you'll recognize this. It doesn't half sound like Genesis chapter 1. It's in the same kind of language. And Genesis chapter 1 was written after it. And here's the reality. We know the writers of Genesis chapter 1, probably working in Babylon, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land, subvert the text of the Babylonian creation story. Babylon was the superpower of the day. And Babylon determined what people believed. But these followers of the God of Israel didn't buy this story, because the story of the Babylonian creation myth is dehumanizing. If you read it through, and I don't have time to go into it, you'll discover that creation comes out of the anger of the gods as they war against one another. That there is only one person on earth who's made in the image of the Babylonian god. His name was Marduk. And that one person was the one representative of God on earth. And guess who it turned out to be? the king of Babylon, only the king in the Babylonian, the expansive story of creation that all of the Babylon's subjects, including the Jews, were taught. Only the king is in God's image. The gods hate humanity. They make them by accident out of the war they're warring. Only the king is in God's image. Underneath the king come others. In a hierarchical order, there are the nobility, there are the merchants, there are the military, but no one else counts. Women don't count, slaves don't count, and people from other nations don't count. This is a Babylonian creation story. No one else gets in. And Genesis chapter 1 is written to subvert it. It is the original get your knee off our necks text. We're in exile in Babylon, but we too are made in God's image. If you read that story, that precious story, that poem, Genesis chapter 1, and so God created humankind. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Everybody's in. The poor are no longer oppressed. The poor no longer have no voice. Everybody's in. This is a revolution. Actually, it was the equivalent of an atomic bomb going off in the culture of Babylon as the people of God stand up and declare, we are made in God's image, all of us. It is about inclusion. It's about diversity. It's the original diversity text. It's the original equality text. It's before its time. Truly, it's before its time. But it goes further. It's not just that everyone is in, every man, every woman, every child. There is no nationality in it. In fact, when I told you about the Babylonian creation story, what I didn't say is that most ancient cultures had, and we still have, because we dug them up, our archaeologists have dug them up, creation stories from those cultures. And here's the thing. You can check it out. You can go to the British Museum, by the way, in central London and see so much of this. Every one of them is hierarchical. Every one of them puts men at the top. Every one of them puts the monarch at the top. And every one of them puts women at the bottom. And every one of them excludes anyone else of a different color, a different ethnicity, a different race. There is no diversity in any of it. But here's another extraordinary thing about Genesis 1. Look through it. It's not an Israel text. It doesn't say the people of Israel, all of them, are created in the image of God. It says all humanity are in. On the first page of the Bible, nationalism dies. It is a global text. That's what Genesis 1 is. But there's a deeper level, one more level I dig down into. God says, let us create them in our image. And of course, though the doctrine that we now hold of the Trinity isn't fully developed, it's not fully developed in the New Testament thousands of years later. Of course, it's not fully developed until the church begins to grow around the world. But God says, let us create them in our image. We know that in the very Godhead, there's diversity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. God is a community because you cannot love unless you know community. For God to be love unless God is a community is an oxymoron. It's an irrelevance. It can't be true. I cannot love unless there is another to love. But here is the reality. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Not three fathers sat round chatting, a community of sameness, a club. Not three sons in a gang, and not a gaggle of spirits. The Trinity is a community of diversity. And Genesis chapter 1 is the text that from the word go nails inclusion, diversity, and equality, justice and solidarity. That's where we are. It's the original get your knee off my neck text, long before the tragic awful murder of George Floyd. Long before 28 years ago in 1993, Stephen Lawrence was murdered. Of course, the Stephen Lawrence murder in our country, through the Macpherson report, those of you who are old enough to remember all of that, through Sir William Macpherson did a report. He chaired the inquiry, actually, and that's where we get the term institutional racism from. It was the Macpherson report that invented it. The problem for me with the term institutional racism, and I'm not in denial of the fact that we have institutional racism in our country. As Norma introduced me, she said that we've just been asked, Oasis, by the Ministry of Justice, the MOJ, to launch the country's first secure school. It's an alternative to youth jail. We're building it at the moment, and we're going to open it next year. Law is going through Parliament for the first time so that a charity can actually run a jail, but we called it a secure school. We're going to call it Oasis Restore, because we don't believe in retribution, we believe in restoration. And so here's the thing: every child who comes to this school would have been sentenced for violent crime, attempted murder, murder, rape. They'll all be in that category. Shall I tell you something? The categories that are hugely overrepresented are black kids, looked after kids, autistic kids. If you're black, looked after and autistic in our culture, you stand little chance in society at all, because we still exclude. We still have to learn the lesson of Genesis 1. Genesis chapter 1 is still a massive challenge to us all. It's still a revolution, because we still live in a society that does not respect. So what are we going to do about it? We have institutional racism, and we could say much more about that, and I won't, because you know the facts. So to finish, what are we going to do about it? This is our foundational text, Genesis chapter 1. As I say, the Bible's not in chronological order. It was written, the different books of it. It's a library of books, isn't it? It's not a book, it's a library of books. And the books were written by different people over the course of at least 1,500 years. And this wasn't the first text written. Job is probably the oldest text in the Bible. But how do we know? Why is it put first then? And why did they put this text first and not the Adam and Eve story first, which is the second creation story? There are 7 creation stories, some of them very short, some of them just fragments now that are still contained in the Bible. Why does this one come first? Because it is a call to inclusion and equality and diversity and the honoring of God's image in each one. So here's the thing. When we say you're made in God's image, you know, I say it to people all the time, you're made in God's image. It's not quite what the Bible ever says. The Bible says something different. It doesn't say I'm made in God's image or that you're made in God's image. We've just read it. It says we are in God's image. The Bible doesn't honor our individualism and our individualistic pushing for recognition or ambition. We are made in God's image. I am most in God's image when I'm with you and you with me. We find God in relationship because even God is a community of diversity. So in conclusion, how do we de-escalate the racism that still plagues, the institutional racism that plagues our society? What do we do about it? Well, we have to dismantle it in our churches and through our churches. And that means ensuring that each one of our churches is a safe place for everyone, for all, for every staff member, for every volunteer. We have to therefore create safe places for open, honest conversation, which means that those of us who are perceived to be in power sometimes need to be not in the room. Norma knows this. One of the things we learned in Oasis, as Oasis grew, we have probably 5,000-6,000 staff, is that if you parallel in a school, if you want an honest conversation, don't put the senior leadership team in the room. Don't put the head teacher in the room, because if the head teacher's in the room, the junior teacher, the non-qualified teacher will not feel able to be honest. they will keep quiet. How do we create safe spaces in our churches where people can talk, where where we find ways of listening to what they've said and taking that into our policy? And how representative are our leadership teams in our churches of all of that and of that diversity? Are we listening to each other's experiences, feelings, frustrations, inner anger and suggestions? And if so, how are we doing that? Because it's no good to just say, yes, we are. How does all of that happen? How is that happening? How do we step forward? Institutional racism is a big thing. But a big thing is personal racism. When did you invite into your home somebody of another race, a couple of another race, or another sexuality, or into your home for a meal? Ask yourself, I'm asking myself, who are my friends? Who are my mates? Who do I love? Who do I ring? Who do I invite round? Who do I hang out with? All of these things are vitally important. In the end, closing statement, you don't have to be black to call out racism, but perhaps we have to be complicit or cowards not to in our churches. Racism always thrives best in the company of silence. To quote John Lewis again, to finish, that just absolutely fantastic campaigner for all justice, for all people, inclusion for all. John Lewis said, it's my job in life to make good trouble. I think it's the church's job in life as a whole to make good trouble. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. This is great, and we really like your passion. It's really stimulating. I think we need to go to our breakout group again, where we have 15 minutes to talk, to digest what you have been sharing with us. Yeah, George. Okay. Thank you. Welcome back to a main session. I think we'll agree to go straight to our third presentation. George, make sure that everyone is back to the main hall. Are we all back in the main hall? Think
you're okay to go ahead.
Okay. So everyone, I think we are still in the morning, and now it is my joy and my privilege to introduce someone I call a colleague, a friend, and a mentor, Reverend Dr. Indigit Bohal. For many years, Indigit has worked in the field of interfaith effort toward justice for all people without prejudice. By the age of 20, he was one of the initiators of the first interfaith group in the United Kingdom, and has continued as a central figure in interfaith relations in Britain and Ireland, often facing criticism and opposition. He did not hesitate to push for the right of others. For years, Dr. Indigit has challenged and encouraged the British Methodist Church to positively support the struggle of asylum seekers and refugees for justice and mercy. He has constantly challenged his own denomination, the Methodist Church, and other organizations to resist racism, sexism, homophobia, and all forms of oppressive behavior. And Dr. Chigo has mentioned that, about his work of Indigit in Sheffield around hospitality and sanctuary. And we can understand why in 2018, Dr. Indigit he received the World Methodist Council Award for Peace. Among some of the former recipients, to show you how prestigious that award is, among some of the former recipients of the same award, we can quote the late president of Egypt, Anwar el-Sadat, Mikhail Gorbachev from Russia, Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter from the United States, Donald Soper was one of the recipients. Nelson Mandela from South Africa was also a recipient, and Kofi Annan, just to quote a few, that to show you how prestigious and the Indigit is in line with those people. He's now a retired Methodist minister, and he is the first non-white person to become president of the British Methodist Conference in 2000. He is the founder and the president of the Cities of Sanctuary Network and Movement. He is a former leader of the Koremila community, and he's currently working with churches together in Britain and Ireland to develop and promote the Church of Sanctuary Network and Movement. And he has recently published a book entitled Hospitality and Sanctuary for All. And that's available from churches together in Britain and Ireland. And really, he's like cooking, and I've written a series with him in the Metro Recorder about food around the world, sport, doing all sorts of things. So thank you, Indigit, for really, you are a busy person, but to be here on this platform. And so let's warmly welcome Indigit as he present his talk for us. You are welcome. Over to you, Indigit.
Thank you, dear brother Valentin. I greet you all in the name of Christ and wish upon you the peace and blessings of God. It is a great honor to share with you, and I pray that my contribution, along with that of my fellow presenters, will be part of all that God gives to us to discern the will and way and word of God. I'm here at the invitation of Valentin, and in my message to you, I want to focus on racial justice, a cry and call of God. That call so responsive at the heart of worship and prayer, theology and preaching, a collaborative congregational task for us all. And I want to give you one practice to avoid and one practice to promote. There are challenges in the spheres of personal, structural, and theological work. There remain obstacles to injustice and exclusion in the way, and we can affirm in the words of Scripture that all are one in Christ. We are one, but that does not mean we're all the same. There are different ethnicities, and within each ethnicity there are tribal and rival loyalties and languages and logistics. And these are rooted in histories that go back centuries to the realms of crusades and empire buildings and colonization and the transatlantic slave trade, the Raj in India and so on, all built on and justified by ideologies creating the concepts such as races and castes, structured around different skin colors and different physical characteristics. It's important to be educated in this history and legacy because it empowers us and informs our conversation and work. And how we address each other and name each other, and how we address and name the issues raised is no less complex. So let us not refer to each other or reduce each other with BAME. There are huge variables in skin color and human characteristics. To reduce all of us to BAME is like calling all Indian food curry, which is as ludicrous as calling all British cuisine as gravy. It was Carl Jung who said people value you by reducing you. Well, don't let that happen to you. We are more, we are bigger than anyone ever imagines us or sees us to be. So be valued for who you are in all your complexities. The opening words of Gitanjali, a book by Rabindranath Tagore, says this well: "Thou hast made me endless. Such is thy great pleasure." We have layers and layers of identity. Celebrate the difference. Don't let difference develop into division. We are indeed all children of God, wondrously, beautifully, and beatifically made in the image of God, members of the body of Christ and one in him, remembering always that the body of Christ is beautiful, bruised, broken, and even in the risen manifestation carries and shows the scars of pain. And it is the broken body of Christ, the blood of Christ poured out, that reveals the healing and wholeness, which is the will and way of God. So human beings are wondrously complex. I'm not going to labor that. Steve did that well, and Chigo. And what we call racism is deep inside people, in the bones and blood and brains and being of people, deeply ingrained, and the lens and filter through which all is viewed and valued or not viewed and valued. We all have our prejudices. Of course we do. We all have our likes and dislikes, and what is to our taste and what is not to our taste. But racism is much more than prejudice. Methodist icon Sybil Phoenix, the mother of racism awareness, gave me the best definition of racism, and it said it just 3 words, the complexity of it all. She defined racism as prejudice plus power. We are all prejudiced, but who holds the power? Who holds the power in the Methodist Church? To answer this question, just look at the faces and names of people in the most senior connectional staff team. So Sybil Phoenix opened my eyes, and I'm eternally grateful to her. She helped me to see that racism works at individual, structural, and theological levels. It's an unfinished business. We have work to do, and I want to commend to you the Methodist Conference report on equality, dignity, and inclusion, and adopted under the title of Justice, Dignity, and Solidarity. That has to be embraced at the local level by every congregation, and it has to complete its work at every level of the church. So I want to offer you some thoughts centered on about the only thing Jesus instructed against, what he told his followers not to do when he said, "It shall not be so among you." This instruction was addressed to his closest friends. He said to them, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them, while it shall not be so amongst you. But whoever wishes to be great amongst you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be your slave. Well, we have to be very careful how we use the term slave, of course. Jesus was promoting service, not servitude, humility, not humiliation. In his understanding, being a servant does not mean being a downtrodden doormat. The service Jesus promotes is one that is seen as opposite to being oppressive, domineering, humiliating, and dominant and oppressive tyrant. It shall not be so amongst you. You will not be oppressive, domineering. You will not be humiliating, hurtful, hateful, and tyrannical in the way you conduct yourselves. It shall not be so amongst you. If you could just achieve that, that would be quite something. And the key is to treat all people justly, with love and in humility, never with oppression, aggression, or humiliation. So as we worship and pray and work and witness together, we shall not be rude. We shall not be as tyrants. We shall not lord it over others. It shall not be so amongst you. Well, to move on, I want to draw your attention to one important action that is required by God in answer to the question, what does the Lord require? That question appears twice in Hebrew scriptures. The first is recorded in Deuteronomy chapter 10 and verse 12. And the answer given there is, you shall also love the stranger. And that instruction is repeated. It's the most repeated ethical requirement in the Bible. It is repeated in one way or another at least 37 times. So that has to be the loudest and clearest message of the church in the world today. Our core mission is to work with partners to build cultures of welcome and hospitality and safety to counter environments of hostility. Refugees from Afghanistan fleeing conflict, desperately attempting to board aeroplanes about to take off, clinging on, falling off to their death, is a shameful image of our times. There are human beings seeking safety, refugees seeking sanctuary. No one chooses to be a refugee. No one wants to leave home. However, dangers to life force people to leave home, familiar faces, and surroundings. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the majority of the world's refugees are from countries close to conflict. And refugees from Afghanistan illustrate that. They are fleeing war, they're scared, they live through horrors and humiliation, terror and torture. They bear scars and trauma and distress in their body and being, and people will continue to travel from many countries and many contexts, overcoming obstacles like walls, frontiers, borders, mountains, waters, in order to reach safety and well-being. Long term, this will only stop when nations stop war, stop making weapons, and instead invest in and ensure everyone has access to equality, inclusion, education, homes, hospitals, and build peace. Because everyone wants to live in safety. And as we keep hearing, no one is safe until everyone is safe. With Britain and the EU closing doors, there are no safe or legal routes for refugees. It is practically impossible to get a visa in the country of origin to get to the UK legally in order to seek asylum. And so it creates illegality. The current UK Nationality and Borders Bill creates a two-tier system that treats people as deserving and not deserving refugees. It criminalizes people from Afghanistan and other countries seeking sanctuary here outside very limited official schemes. So it is the duty of governments to help refugees in need of shelter and sanctuary and to provide legal routes for all refugees to travel safely. And when people are deprived of their homes and their families and familiar surroundings, they will be grateful for friendship, a smile, welcome, hospitality, and safety. And the best response at the local level is to do all we can to build cultures of welcome, hospitality, and sanctuary, to express love and kindness. And we can all be agents of change, to work with others to make life better. And this work will help us to connect local stories with global stories. So the way ahead is to widen and deepen relationships across different cultures and creeds and colors and identities, to end hatred and to build cultures where all are welcome, valued, belong equally together, and have sanctuary and are safe. All human beings are just that, human beings with names, stories, and deep relationships, and all want empathy more than sympathy, and respect more than pity. We all belong to each other, and we can all work together to ensure the best for all. So, my challenge to you, consider making your borough, your church, your school, your college, your university, your club, your place of work, a sanctuary committed to building cultures of welcome and hospitality, especially for those in the greatest need and danger. Primarily, this is about helping to make the most vulnerable people feel safe. So Church of Sanctuary, which Valentin mentioned, is part of the City of Sanctuary network, which now is embraced in 120 or more cities and towns and villages and so on. And there are schools of sanctuary, universities of sanctuary, and so on. And I'm focusing on building churches of sanctuary with the support of Churches Together in Britain and Ireland. It's a prophetic Christian witness and call and expression to build hospitality as a clear challenge to hostility. The hope is that churches will become places for all and proud to offer sanctuary to people fleeing persecution and violence. So in the Church of Sanctuary, all members of the congregation work together for three kind of lines of work. Firstly, to do all you can to learn and understand the real life experiences and stories of people seeking sanctuary and help to raise awareness about this and to work by facts and not fiction. Secondly, to do all you can to embed the values and cultures of welcome, hospitality, and safety, and use these to support people seeking sanctuary and include them in your activities. And thirdly, then, to share this work with pride with others, and this commitment and your achievement with others. Let others know about the positive contributions you are making. A space where all are welcome, as Papa Owusu reminded us in our opening prayers. So, my friends, how we relate to each other, and in particular to people seeking sanctuary and safety, will be central to humanity as we go forward. How we all treat those who are in the greatest need for love and safety will be the measure by which we shall judge personal, national, and international morality and spirituality. I've written more about this in the book that Valentin referred to, Hospitality and Sanctuary for All, and you can get it from CTBI and by going to their website. So we know, of course, from Micah chapter 6 and verse 8, that there is a different answer given to the question, so what shall the Lord require of you? And that is to act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. Justice is the foundation for all our work. Mercy is the quality in great need in our world of hatred and cruelty. Humility, while there is no better revelation that someone is walking with God than the humility they reflect. So we reflect humility, we not seek the humiliation of everyone. Let these words of scripture inform and direct you in all your work. So my friends, I offer you these few and very heavily summarized words gleaned from my own experience of working with issues before you. I've wrestled with racial justice matters for longer than the children of Israel were in the wilderness. The journey continues. We have more work to do, and I assure you of my prayerful solidarity as you continue your work. God is calling us to build a justice-based church where justice is served with mercy and humility, a church where all of us, with all our immense diversity, are honored members of the one body of Christ, where all are included at the table with no superiors or inferiors, no centers or margins, where no one is neglected or excluded, and where there is only one goal, and that is always to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. The partnership is greater, this pilgrimage is greater if we work ecumenically and with international partners and embrace each other with respect and give life to each other. And for me, to conclude, Holy Communion is not only a foretaste of the heavenly banquet, it is also a revelation of the world as it meant to be. In a world of violence, the violence of inequalities and war and bigotry, environmental degradation and climate change, the church can reflect a model of one body symbolized in the one bread we share, a sanctuary for all. We stand with solidarity with each other in our suffering humanity, not in charity, but with justice, mercy, and humility, seeking the safety and fulfillment of all. Bless you. Thank you for your attention. I assure you of my prayerful solidarity.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Indrajit. That's really another stimulating presentation. Thank you. And without any ado, let's go to our breakout group as we discuss and digest. Thank you. Okay.
I find that
Welcome.
15 minutes went quite quickly.
Welcome back, everyone. I think now we have our last session, and from this session, oh, are we having tea break?
There's no time.
Okay. Okay, so 5 minutes. So we have 5 minutes. Judge is giving us 5 minutes, and then immediately we come to a next session. So 5 minute break, and then we come to the final session. 5 minutes. Thank you.
Papa, your loving kindness and grace and mercies brought me through. So the essence of my praise and so centered on your grace. I love Adum. Hey, Adum. Oh, centered on your grace. I love Adum. Hey, you have been my doctor on that sick bed. By your stripes, I am healed, I am free.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We have our last session, and after that session, we'll go straight to the plenary. So we are not going back to breakout groups. So let me invite Nancy Han to introduce Mrs. Yogi Sutton, our first speaker.
Thank you, Valentin. It's my great pleasure to introduce and welcome Yogi to our morning. A wife, a mother, and a grandmother, and a Roman Catholic laywoman. She was born in South Africa and married an Irishman during the years of apartheid, and so emigrated to London. She's a teacher by profession and retired in 2000. She held many roles within the church: parish council chair, parish catechist, trustee to Southwark Catholic Children's Society, trustee to Women at the Well, president of the National Board of Catholic Women, and chair of the Catholic Association for Racial Justice. She has been awarded the Champion Medal and Catholic Woman of the Year, and received an apostolic blessing from Pope Francis. As chair of the Catholic Association for Racial Justice, she has been involved in several talks, workshops, and webinars tackling racism. We very much look forward to what she has to share with us this morning. Thank you, Yogi.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much, Nancy, for that introduction. I quickly want to say that I'm neither a minister, nor am I an orator. So I ask for your patience while I give my reflection. I should take about 10 minutes. I am, as Nancy says, a practicing Christian, a Roman Catholic Christian. And I believe that my confirmation has made and prepared me to be a disciple of Christ. I share more deeply in the common priesthood of the faithful and in the priestly, kingly, and prophet mission of Christ. Through the sacraments and my faith, my trust in the Creator, I am given special graces to enable me to spread and defend the faith by word and deed as a true witness to Christ. I would like to spend just a few minutes on deed. Exactly what does this mean to me? I grew up believing that Jesus lives in me My body is a temple. Jesus does not physically walk the earth today. We do not have the joy of the first 12 apostles. They were very fortunate to have their work experience alongside him. They walked and talked, even sat down to eat with him. However, Christ living in me works through me. He sees through my eyes, he hears with my ears, he does with my hands, and so on. So please bear with me as I read the very hackneyed parable of the sheep and the goats. This is a reading from Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep at his right hand, but the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, O blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me." Then he will say to those on his left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will also answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison, and did not minister to you?" He will answer, "Truly I say to you, as you did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not for me." They will go away for eternal punishment. The works of mercy is an extension of the commandment to love God, to love oneself, and to love one's neighbor. However, with this privilege comes an important obligation to help those on the margins, those on the peripheries of society, those who are genuinely in need. I want us together to look at these works of mercy. The first one, we should feed the hungry and give drink to the thirsty. I am very aware that one does not live by bread alone, that prayer is a special ingredient to life. That said, life cannot continue without nourishment of both kinds. Good, healthy food makes for a healthy body and healthy living. So I ask myself, what is my role? Wherever possible, we tend to support food banks and charities that care for those in need. Most of our churches have special days, special centers where they collect and distribute. This, of course, is admirable, and it is very much to be appreciated. In my humble opinion, may I suggest there is a parallel measure necessary. Food banks are a lifeline for many in this country. Even more necessary is the need to research and understand why is this a need in a first world country, such a wealthy country as ours. Why are people forced into using these food banks? Why are families put into these sad situations of having no choice but to receive supplies from these places? Now, as an individual, how do I affect change? Considering respect, education, employment and earnings of our fellow beings. No one should go without sufficient food and drink. I want you just to spend 30 seconds on what I've just said. Maybe just jot down one word that allows you to think about this. My second work of mercy is clothing the naked. Again, our family beings are bare in so many ways. Let me just consider education. Many a parent struggling because children are suspended, expelled, placed in alternative establishments where they're often not monitored, sometimes even forgotten. Many of these families would be economically bare, and they, in most cases, would come from marginalized communities. I want you to spend a moment with your disciple cap on and consider the following: loneliness, unemployment, a lack of friends, a lack of motivation. Can you see how all of these can leave one naked? As a disciple of Christ, working on deed, what is every individual's role? My third work of mercy, sheltering the homeless. Boy, has COVID just uncovered so many of these evils. Mortgages beyond reach, rentals now unaffordable, families struggling to survive, domestic violence, suicides, marriage breakups, family breakdowns, all of these on the rise. Statistically, things are going through the roof. Yeah, there is a problem in accepting the stranger. We've heard from other speakers today about that. Often immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers are not fully accepted, nor supported, nor nurtured and given a sense of belonging. Unfortunately, but realistically, most people in these categories are people of color. Again, there are many good, honest charities doing sterling work in this field. I ask myself, where should my focus be? What would Jesus do? How much time do I even give to thinking of this? We all live busy lives. We're always on the run. Do I give time to this? My fourth work of mercy is visiting the imprisoned. Statistics show that a high percentage of prisoners are people of color. I don't know much about this. I wonder how much each individual here today knows about them. These are a few thoughts I put together. What can I offer to men and women whose spouses are in prison? How might I support their families? It is true to say that material goods would help, but alongside that should go befriending, giving support that aids self-esteem, offering joy in these dire circumstances. Another would be, how do we engage in crime prevention? Wiser people speak of youth groups, youth clubs, engaging young people in worthy ventures.